Of all the genuinely unhelpful mental habits that we can fall prey to, rumination has got to be my least favorite. I struggled with this for so many years, and I can't begin to imagine the amount of sleep I lost in the process and how much unnecessary suffering that I put myself through. And like so many of you, I tried everything, but nothing seemed to work for me. It took me years to find a fail-safe strategy that would actually quiet these thoughts. But I did find one, and that is what I'm going to be sharing with you today. But first, if you're new here, my name's Nina. I help people to transform their lives through understanding their own psychology. So if that is something that you may find helpful, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. But let's go ahead and jump right into today's topic. And I want to start by talking about what rumination really is and why it can be so problematic for us. So firstly, rumination is the act of dwelling on or replaying negative scenarios in our head. This can involve reliving or catastrophizing past events, imagining scary possibilities for the future, and sometimes can even evolve into a scary combination of both. And the worst part is that rumination really is pointless. We experience all of this suffering and then gain nothing in the process because it doesn't help us solve problems. It's just this constant loop of negative thoughts and emotions that doesn't lead to any action taking. In fact, rumination and problem solving are actually opposites, and this is why. When we are ruminating, we're focused on either the past or the future instead of the present, and we're also focused on our own negative thoughts and feelings instead of on the problem itself. But when we actually engage in problem solving, we are focused on the present and on the problem itself. So we end up generating and evaluating solutions rather than just dwelling on our own negative thoughts and feelings. One of my favorite quotes that sums this up perfectly says, "Rumination is like a dog chasing its tail. It goes round and round, but never gets anywhere." But I think the problem for so many of us is that we can't just automatically start thinking rationally or shift into problem-solving mode when our brain is still spinning because we're stuck in this negative cycle that's causing us tremendous anxiety, oftentimes about problems that will never actually come into fruition. Now, for many people, they can learn to break this cycle by identifying the triggers that cause us to ruminate and then challenging these negative thoughts and reframing them into something more positive and constructive. Other people find success in distracting themselves and doing something else to get their mind off of it. And sometimes these strategies do work for me. And then other times I really get hung up on the challenging the negative thoughts part because I can't shake that little voice inside of me that says, what if? What if these things really do happen? I can't always convince myself that there is a guarantee that these things aren't going to happen. So it's like I want to mentally prepare myself for these potentially negative consequences that I have completely invented in my head. And this is actually a theme that I hear from a lot of people. And if it's something that you can relate to, it's likely that the system that I now use will also help you as well. So let's go ahead and go through it. When I catch myself ruminating, I now have a 3-tier system of self-talk that can almost always pull me out of this negative cycle. I was able to learn what I needed to say to myself to quiet these thoughts, and I also learned that there are different stages and types of rumination, which is why the 3 different approaches can be necessary. Now, the third one is the one that really did change my life, but I have found all 3 to be helpful at different times. And the first self-talk approach is to start with logic, to remind ourselves what the facts are, not only about the situation that we are ruminating over, but also about worry in general and the unlikelihood that what we are worrying about is actually going to happen. One of my favorite studies to think about was conducted in 2019 at Penn State, and I'm going to go ahead and link it down in the description box below because it's definitely worth reading. But it showed that over 91% of the time, the things that we worry about never even happen. And what's more than this is that the remaining 9% of the time where the thing actually does happen, the outcome is often far better than imagined. So even though due to the nature of worry, our brain tries to demand that we pay attention to these thoughts, they are almost always a false alarm. So our first line of action can be to remind ourselves that there is an overwhelming probability that things will work out. A good exercise is to try to think about what you were worrying about a year ago or even a month ago and look at the outcome. If you can even remember what you were stressing about at that time, it can be proof that the things that we obsess over often not only work out or turn out to be nothing, but are also things that oftentimes we can't even later recall. Things often seem critical in the moment and then simply disappear when nothing happens, or we just replace these thoughts with new worries. So the bottom line is to start with logic. Sometimes we really can talk ourselves out of worry this way. But if that does not prove to be the case, we simply move on to the next thought approach, which is to convince your brain that the problem has been heard and that it will be addressed. So when our thoughts are looping and we notice that we keep going over the same scenario in our mind again and again and again, we have to understand that even though the behavior itself is not helpful, our brain does want the problem to be solved. It's trying to remind us over and over that it thinks that something's wrong. So when our thoughts won't stop like this, even though this is a self-talk approach, we are going to start by taking some action, which is stopping everything, sitting down and writing out the entire problem. We are going to write down all our looping thoughts, including everything that seems completely irrational. Just keep writing until you feel like there is nothing else to write. And when you are completely done, you're going to take a nice deep breath and tell yourself we are now switching into problem-solving mode. We have to let the brain know that we've heard it, that we understand the concerns, that we have written down every aspect of the problem, and that it is fine for it to finally take a break, because we are not going to forget anything. It is on the piece of paper and we can simply address it when we are ready to do so. And I have found this to be enormously helpful, because usually when I ruminate, it's late at night and it costs me a lot of sleeping, and this helps me to stop nagging myself, because I have usually been able to convince myself that the problem is heard and that we are going to address it in the morning. And the next part of the strategy is going to be moving into actual problem solving, hopefully after we've had a little bit of rest or a little bit of time and space away from the issue. And the first thing is to figure out whether or not this is an actual problem that we should be worrying about. Sometimes once we've had a little rest or a little time away, we realize that maybe our fears were a little bit irrational, and it is a lot easier at that point to quiet these thoughts. Other times we can realize that it is a justified cause for worry. However, it's something that is not in our hands. It's something that we ourselves cannot control. And if that is the case, I have a video that you may want to watch. I will go ahead and link it in the description box below. But we can abandon the rest of this approach and go right to approach number 3 at this point, and I will talk about that in a moment. But if we find that there's a problem that actually does need to be solved, there are 5 simple steps that we can do as a journaling exercise to help us work it out. And this involves defining the problem, brainstorming solutions or ways to mitigate the issue, evaluating the solutions, making a plan, and taking action. It really is that simple, and the crazy thing is that studies show us that simply shifting from worrying to problem solving immediately helps us to feel better, even well before the problem is actually solved. But sometimes we're struggling with something that is completely out of our hands. It's something that we are not in control of. And so there's no action that we could take that could help or mitigate the situation. And let's say also that thinking logically about the situation was not helpful, because it's something that is a real possibility. Now, for whatever reason, these are the types of situations that I tend to ruminate over the most, and throughout the years really prevented me from being able to break the habit, because like I said earlier, I felt like being in that 91% was not something that I could rely on. But I finally realized that there is something that I can rely on, and that is myself, or more specifically, my future self that would be handling this issue. Whenever we get so caught up in worry, we tend to automatically discount our own innate ability to get through things. We always assume that we're going to fail, or that we're not going to be able to come up with the answer, or that we're not going to be able to handle whatever the outcome is. We have zero self-trust. But here's the thing, we are still here, and we have gotten through and handled every single thing that life has ever thrown in our way. everything. Maybe we don't always have the perfect solution, but we find some way to get through it. We navigate it somehow. Yet despite this absolutely stellar record, we failed to recognize and relax in this reality. And this realization has absolutely changed my life. I can look at every single person that I love and know for certain that there is nothing that I wouldn't do to help them if they needed it. And now I fully recognize that I am not going to let myself down either. I finally understand that it's okay if I end up in the 9% instead of the 91% because I have enough self-trust in my future self to do whatever is needed in these situations, whether that be to comfort myself or to find support when things are out of my hands, or to find the information that I need, or to be resilient when things are difficult, or to find a solution when that is actually a possibility to do so. I am not going to fail myself, and you are not going to fail yourself either. We may not always have the perfect answer, but we can always be there for ourselves. So when the rumination gets to that point, assure yourself that your future self will take care of it, or at least be able to handle it if and when something actually happens. Because that's the reality. And if we can learn to simply deal with real problems when they actually happen, instead of constantly suffering because of things that may never exist outside of our own mind, we can have freedom to just live our life and finally get out of our head. We need to remind ourselves that rumination is borrowing trouble that may never come, and that we can use these self-talk strategies whenever we need to. They have been a complete game changer for me, and I really hope that they are life-changing for you as well. I would love to hear if today's message resonated with you, so please don't forget to leave your thoughts down below. As always, I truly hope that today's video was helpful and insightful. If it was, please like it, share it, and definitely become a subscriber if you aren't one already. I would absolutely love it if you stayed connected. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I hope the rest of your day is extraordinary.